I met Bryce during our first year at community college, and honestly, those first 2 months were like something out of a romance movie. We'd spend hours on FaceTime every night, talking about everything and nothing until one of us fell asleep with the phone still pressed to our ear. He had this way of making me laugh until my stomach hurt. And when he'd walk me to class, I felt like the luckiest girl on campus. Everyone could see how crazy we were about each other. My roommate used to roll her eyes at how often he'd text me, but I didn't care. I was completely gone for this boy. That first year together was incredible. We took weekend trips down to Myrtle Beach, staying in this cheap motel that smelled like cigarettes and cleaning supplies. But we didn't care because we had each other. We'd walk along the beach at sunset, and Bryce would collect shells for me like we were 12 years old. But it was sweet. We went to movies every Friday night, tried new restaurants around town, went on double dates with my roommate and her boyfriend. Our families loved us together. My mom would always ask when Bryce was coming to dinner, and his parents treated me like I was already part of the family. Everything felt perfect, like we were building something real and lasting. But then our second year started, and I don't know, things began to feel different. I joined this new study group for my psychology classes, and that's where I met Tyler, Jess, and Connor. They were older, more sophisticated than the people I usually hung out with. Tyler was this pre-law student who always had these philosophical discussions about relationships and society, and Jess was this confident girl who seemed to know exactly who she was and what she wanted. And Connor? Connor had this mysterious energy that just drew people in. He'd make these offhand comments about art and literature that made me realize how much I didn't know about the world. They started inviting me to parties, these intimate gatherings where people actually talked about meaningful things instead of just getting wasted and hooking up. I'd tell Bryce about them, and he'd just shrug and say they sounded boring, that he'd rather stay in and watch Netflix with me, which was sweet, I guess, but also kind of limiting, like I was growing as a person, expanding my horizons, and he seemed content to stay exactly where he was. I started going to these parties without him, telling myself it was healthy for us to have separate interests and friend groups. Tyler would always make these comments about how relationships could be constraining if you let them, how the most evolved couples were the ones who gave each other space to explore and grow. Jess would talk about her ex-boyfriend, who was so secure in himself that he encouraged her to date other people because he knew she'd always come back to him. And Connor, well, Connor had this way of looking at me during these conversations that made my heart race in a way that scared me. Not because I wanted to cheat on Bryce, but because it reminded me that there was a whole world of experiences out there that I'd never had. I started pulling back from Bryce without really meaning to. When he'd suggest our usual Friday movie night, I'd say I had to study. When he wanted to plan another weekend trip, I'd claim I was too stressed with school. I told myself I just needed some space to figure out who I was becoming, that this was normal and healthy. But really, I think I was testing him, seeing if he'd fight for me, prove that he couldn't live without me. Instead, he just gave me the space I asked for, which somehow made me even more frustrated. The idea came to me gradually, planted by all those late-night conversations with Tyler and Jess about modern relationships and traditional constraints. I started researching open relationships online, reading articles about how they could strengthen bonds between couples by eliminating jealousy and possessiveness. The more I read, the more convinced I became that this could be exactly what Bryce and I needed. We could explore what was out there, get it out of our systems, and then come back to each other stronger and more committed than ever. It seemed so mature, so evolved compared to the possessive, limiting relationship we'd fallen into. I planned the conversation for weeks, rehearsing what I'd say and how I'd frame it. I ordered Chinese takeout and invited him over to my dorm room on a Thursday night when my roommate was at her boyfriend's place. We ate lome on my bed while watching some cooking show, and I kept waiting for the right moment to bring it up. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Finally, during a commercial break, I took a deep breath and said, "Bryce, I've been thinking, what if we opened up our relationship?" I explained how we were young and should be exploring all our options before settling down, how this could make us stronger as a couple, how it showed how secure and mature our love was. I talked about trust and growth and experiencing life to the fullest. I was so nervous but also excited, like I was offering him this amazing gift that would transform our relationship into something extraordinary. He just stared at me for the longest time, and I watched his face go through all these different expressions. For a second, I thought he might get upset or start arguing with me. But then this weird little smile crossed his lips and he said, "Okay, let's give it a try." Just like that. No questions. No negotiation. No asking what the boundaries would be or how it would work. I was honestly a little surprised by how easily he agreed, but also relieved that he was being so mature about it. I thought it proved how solid our foundation was. That he trusted me enough to try this. What I didn't expect was how quickly everything would change. The very next day, Bryce seemed different somehow. Lighter. Maybe he texted me less. Didn't seem as eager to make plans. And when I asked how his shift at Panera went, he'd just say fine instead of telling me all the funny stories about difficult customers like he usually did. I figured he was just adjusting to our new arrangement. Maybe feeling a little weird about it, like I tried going on a few dates with guys from my classes, but honestly, they were all so boring compared to what I had with Bryce. One guy took me to Applebee's and spent the entire dinner talking about his cryptocurrency investments. Another one picked me up in his mom's minivan and suggested we go to a high school basketball game for our date. I kept thinking about how Bryce would have made me laugh through these terrible experiences, how he would have known exactly what to say to make everything better. Connor and I had coffee a few times, and while he was definitely interesting to talk to, there wasn't that natural chemistry I'd expected. He was attractive in an abstract way, but when he tried to kiss me after our third coffee date, I felt absolutely nothing. It was like kissing a stranger, which I guess he was really... I started to wonder if maybe I'd made a mistake, if what Bryce and I had was actually pretty special and I'd been taking it for granted. But then I heard through mutual friends that Bryce had been seen around town with some girl from work, and suddenly I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. He was supposed to go on maybe one awkward date, realize how good he had it with me, and come running back more appreciative than ever. He wasn't supposed to actually find someone else, someone who might matter to him. I tried to play it cool, casually asking him about his dating life when we talked on the phone. He was vague, but mentioned that he'd been hanging out with Emma, one of his coworkers at Panera. She's really cool, he said, and something about the way he said it made my blood run cold. There was this warmth in his voice that I recognized because it was the same way he used to talk about Mig. When I saw on Instagram that he'd gone to some wedding as Emma's date, I completely lost it. A wedding. That's not casual dating. That's relationship level stuff. That's meeting family and being introduced as someone important. I stared at the photos of them together. Him in a suit I'd never seen before. Her in this pretty blue dress. Both of them looking so happy and natural together. The comments were all from her family and friends, saying what a cute couple they made, asking how long they'd been together. I wanted to comment and tell them all that he was my boyfriend, that this was just some temporary arrangement. But I knew how crazy that would sound. I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't eat the next day. This wasn't what I'd meant when I suggested opening our relationship. I meant we'd casually see other people. Nothing serious. Nothing that threatened what we had together. But Bryce was clearly taking this way too far, getting emotionally involved with this Emma girl in a way that completely violated the spirit of our agreement. We needed to have a serious conversation about boundaries and what was appropriate. I decided to go to his work to talk to him face to face, somewhere he couldn't just brush me off or change the subject. I knew his schedule by heart. So I showed up at Panera during the lunch rush when I knew he'd be in the kitchen. The moment I walked through those doors and saw Emma behind the counter, looking all perky and innocent in her stupid visor, I felt my anger spike. She was pretty, I guess, in a basic girl next door way, but nothing special. Certainly nothing worth throwing away 2 years for. I marched straight back to the kitchen where Bryce was making sandwiches. And the second he saw me, his whole body tensed up. "Madison," he said, like he was annoyed to see me, which was already a red flag. "What are you doing here? We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable despite the fact that Emma had followed me back there and was hovering nearby like some kind of guard dog. "Bryce, you need to stop talking to her. This isn't what I meant when I said open relationship." The way he looked at me in that moment, like I was some stranger making unreasonable demands, cut me deeper than anything he'd ever said. "You wanted this," he said, loud enough that other employees could hear. "Don't get mad because I moved on faster than you thought I would." Moved on. Like our entire relationship meant nothing to him. Like 2 years of love and memories and plans for the future could just be erased by some random Panera employee who probably didn't even know his middle name or how he liked his coffee or that he was afraid of spiders. I tried to explain that there was a difference between casually dating and getting seriously involved with someone, that we'd never discuss boundaries or what was off limits, but he just stood there shaking his head like I was being unreasonable. Right there, in the middle of Panera, he said, and I could feel everyone staring at us. I told her it was over. Just like that. 2 years. Finished. Because I'd tried to grow our relationship into something more mature, and he'd completely missed the point. Emma was standing there looking all concerned and supportive, like she was the victim in this situation, when she was obviously the one who'd manipulated him into thinking this was okay. I left the restaurant feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. Like this couldn't possibly be happening. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. Bryce was supposed to be my person, the one who understood me better than anyone else in the world. We were supposed to work through this rough patch and come out stronger on the other side. Instead, he was acting like I was some crazy ex-girlfriend who meant nothing to him. I started texting him immediately, trying to explain what had really happened, how he'd misunderstood everything. I called him over and over, left voicemails explaining that I'd never wanted anyone else, that the open relationship thing was just about adding some excitement to what we already had, not about replacing each other. I sent him long messages on Instagram detailing all our good memories, reminding him of inside jokes and special moments we'd shared. I needed him to remember who we were together, what we meant to each other. But he wouldn't respond. He wouldn't even read my messages. It was like I'd become invisible to him overnight, like our entire history had been erased. Meanwhile, I kept seeing pictures of him and Emma pop up on social media, looking more and more like a real couple every day. She posted photos of them at some hiking trail with the caption, "Perfect day with my favorite person." And I wanted to scream. I was his favorite person. I'd been his favorite person for 2 years. My friends tried to be supportive. But I could tell they didn't really understand what I was going through. Tyler kept saying that maybe this was for the best, that I deserved someone who appreciated my growth and maturity. Jess suggested that Bryce had probably been looking for an excuse to break up with me anyway, and I'd just given him one. But they were wrong. Bryce loved me. I knew he did. He was just confused right now, probably being manipulated by Emma into thinking he wanted something different. I decided to try one more time to reach out to him, to really make him understand what had happened and how we could fix it. I called him from my roommate's phone so he couldn't just ignore it. And when he answered, I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. I told him I was sorry for how everything had gotten so messed up, that I'd never wanted anyone else, that the whole open relationship thing had been a mistake. I promised we could go back to how things were before, just the two of us, exclusive and committed. "If you wanted to be with me," he said. And his voice was so cold, it didn't even sound like him anymore. "You wouldn't have asked for an open relationship in the first place. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." That was the last conversation we ever had. He blocked my number, blocked me on all social media, cut me out of his life completely, like I was some kind of toxic person who'd never meant anything to him. And Emma, God, Emma got everything I was supposed to have. She got the version of Bryce who brought flowers just because, who planned surprise dates, who talked about the future like it was something bright and exciting. She got the Bryce who was confident and decisive and knew exactly what he wanted. I see them around campus sometimes, and they look so happy it makes me physically sick. They have this easy, natural chemistry that I thought only Bryce and I shared. She laughs at his jokes the same way I used to, and he looks at her like she's the most amazing thing in the world, like she's everything he ever wanted. They're apparently talking about transferring to the same 4-year university next year, making plans and building a future together. And I'm alone. All those friends who seemed so sophisticated and evolved when I was in a relationship have moved on to other things. Other people. Tyler graduated and moved back home. Jess transferred schools. Connor turned out to be a pretentious asshole who only wanted to sleep with me anyway. I'm taking the same classes, living in the same dorm, working the same part-time job. But everything feels empty and pointless without Bryce in my life. The worst part is that everyone acts like this is somehow my fault. Like I did something wrong by trying to grow our relationship and explore our options. But I was being honest about my needs, communicating openly instead of just cheating or lying like most people would do. I was trying to be mature and progressive. And it backfired spectacularly because Bryce completely misunderstood what I was offering him. I know he thinks he's happy with Emma, but how could he be? She's so basic, so ordinary. She works at Panera and thinks Buffalo Wild Wings is a fancy dinner. She's never challenged him intellectually or pushed him to grow as a person. She's just this safe, simple choice that doesn't require any real thought or effort. I was offering him something deeper, more complex, more real than whatever surface-level connection he has with her. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never met Tyler and Jess and Connor. If I'd never started questioning whether what Bryce and I had was enough, maybe we'd still be together, planning our transfer to a 4-year school, talking about getting an apartment together. Maybe we'd be engaged by now, planning a wedding, building the life we always talked about during those late-night phone calls our first year together. But I can't go back and change what happened. I can't undo the conversation that destroyed everything. Can't take back the words that made him think I didn't love him anymore. All I can do is watch from a distance as he builds the life we were supposed to have together with someone who will never understand him the way I did, who will never love him as completely as I do. The truth is, I'll probably always love Bryce. He was my first real relationship, my first love. The person who showed me what it felt like to be completely understood and accepted by someone else. Emma might have him now, but she'll never have our history, our inside jokes, our shared memories of that perfect first year when everything felt possible. She's just a rebound who happened to stick around longer than she should have. I keep telling myself that eventually he'll realize what he lost. That he'll remember what we had together and understand that it was something special, something worth fighting for. Maybe Emma will show her true colors. Reveal herself to be as shallow and boring as I know she really is. Maybe he'll wake up one day and realize that he gave up something real and meaningful for something easy and temporary. But deep down, I know that's probably not going to happen. Bryce seems genuinely happy with his new life, his new girlfriend, his new plans for the future that don't include me at all. He's moved on completely, while I'm still stuck in the past, still trying to understand how everything went so wrong so fast. I guess this is what I get for trying to have it all. For thinking I could explore other options while keeping the best thing in my life as a backup plan. I thought I was being smart and mature. But maybe I was just being greedy. Maybe some things are too precious to risk, too important to gamble with, even when you're convinced you know how the game will end. Now, I'm alone in my dorm room on a Friday night, scrolling through social media and watching other people live the lives I thought I was too good for. Bryce and Emma just posted pictures from some concert they went to, looking ridiculously happy and in love. And I can't help but remember all the concerts Bryce and I talked about going to, but never did because I was always too busy or too tired or had other plans. I wonder if she knows how lucky she is, if she appreciates what she has with him, or if she just takes it for granted the way I did. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, about what we had together, about the plans we made and the future we dreamed about. I wonder if he's really as happy as he looks, or if sometimes late at night, he remembers what it felt like to be with someone who truly understood him. But mostly I wonder how I became the villain in my own love story. How trying to grow and evolve and explore turned me into the crazy ex-girlfriend who lost the best thing that ever happened to her. I thought I was the protagonist of this story. The brave girl who was willing to take risks and challenge conventional relationship norms. Instead, I ended up being the cautionary tale. The girl who had everything and threw it away because she thought she deserved more